Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing Relationship Coach Discusses Dumper's Remorse. I provide audio coaching to help people try and get their ex back or get a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Check out my website for more details, www.dateme.tips. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing Relationship Coach Discusses Dumper's Remorse. So after being a relationship coach for many years, one of the most common questions that I'm asked by dumpees is regarding Dumper's Remorse. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 points to consider regarding Dumper's Remorse. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is remorse isn't on a time limit. Now, one of the biggest worries that dumpees have is whether or not there is a time limit for when their ex can regret the decision and want to reconnect. And what I'm here to say is that generally speaking, there isn't a time limit, although there are some trends that I want to speak with you right now. Now, there is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing fails 100% of the time. But when we look at the many years of research and experience that I have within this topic, what I can say is that the average amount of time that I have seen for a dumper to reach out to a dumpee is around 6 months. So what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that they don't have to feel a level of remorse where they want to reconnect straight away. 6 months is probably a lot longer than most dumpees would like to hear me say, but at least it is a figure that I can give. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that this is always going to work out for you. As I've only just recently said, there is no guaranteed way of getting your ex back, and unfortunately, some of you dumpees won't do this. But what I will say is that if you live your life in the right way, if you don't get your ex back, you can and will find somebody even better, even though that may feel impossible right now. But when we speak about time limits and when a dumper may feel remorse, I would say that the average amount of time that they seem to reach out is around 6 months. Now, this might mean that some people have their ex reach out after a week, and some people might not have their ex reach out to them for 3 years. Now, both of those figures I've given you aren't just plucked out of thin air. They are truthful, honest timeframes that I've experienced, that I've coached people with. So this is very much possible. Me saying a week, me saying 3 years, it can happen that way. And when we look at that middle ground, if we look at probably the most common time frame that a dumper reaches out, I would say, like I said, it is around 6 months. But you're worrying about a time limit. And what I do need to say is that after we move past the year mark, there is a definite decrease in chance of reconnecting. Now, does this mean that if it goes past a year, you definitely can't get your ex back? No, that is not the case. I've only just said that I've known people hear from their ex after many years. So what we have here is, in general, a situation where remorse isn't on a time limit. I've seen both ends of the spectrum, but the trend does suggest that if it's gone beyond a year, your chances of success do reduce. But I'm never going to say never. I've seen and heard so many crazy situations, but I'm never going to say to you, this is completely impossible. I might say you've probably got less than 5% chance, and you need to take that on board and move forward in a way which reflects that. But I'm never going to say never, because I've heard some of the craziest, most bizarre, most surprising situations take place. Similarly, when people get blocked, they think, is this it? Well, it's certainly not a good sign. It's certainly not a good position. But I've known people be blocked, then a year later be unblocked, have their ex reach out to them and reconnect. So what does that show? It shows that anything seems to be possible within relationships. We never know when the story ends. So I would say, generally speaking, point number 1, remorse isn't on a time limit. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. about relationship coach discusses dumpers remorse. And point number 2 is dumpees have control. Now, one of the biggest worries that dumpees have after a breakup is a loss of control. They don't control the situation. The relationship is over. They didn't want that to happen. They have lost control. The dumper seems to have all of the power. What they want happened. What the dumpee wanted didn't happen. But I'm here to tell you that dumpees do have a level of control regarding dumper's remorse. And this is due to the dumpee's behaviour. So the way a dumpee conducts themselves post-breakup can have a huge effect on the possible dumper's remorse. So let me just give an example. If after the breakup you chased your ex, if after the breakup you didn't take no for an answer, if after the breakup you didn't respect your dumper's decision, you knocked on their door, you waited outside where they work, you kept calling them, when you were blocked, you called them from a different number. If you do excessive, extreme things such as these, you are much less likely to have a situation where your dumper feels remorse. When somebody ends a relationship, they are not seeing their dumpee in the best light regarding a romantic connection. That is why they've ended a relationship. So the last thing you want to do is annoy them. The last thing you want to do is frustrate them. The last thing you want to do is push them further away. If you chase your dumper, you're most likely going to be chasing them further away, not bringing them back. You can't persuade somebody to be in a relationship with you. It doesn't work. Okay, they need to feel this organically. It needs to come from within. It needs to be genuine. So you need to attract rather than repel. So the control that a dumpee has post-breakup is their own behaviour. Are you going to be chasing your ex further away and making them think, hey, I've made the right decision because my dumpee is not respecting me, my dumpee is scaring me, my dumpee is not of stable mind? Are you going to be making them feel that way and not feeling the remorse? Or are you going to be living your life to the full, moving forward in a positive way, becoming a version 2.0 of yourself, and using the hints, tips and strategies that I have suggested in other podcasts about how to try and reattract and grow romantic emotional attraction in your ex's mind? That is where you can influence and stand a better chance of growing dumper's remorse. So I would suggest right now, if you're a dumpee, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Look, I've checked the analytics, only 20% of you are actually subscribed. If you don't subscribe, you won't be notified of every upload. YouTube doesn't work like that anymore. So you need to subscribe, you need to ring that bell for notifications, because else you might get suggested the odd video, but you won't be suggested every single upload. And this is what I believe will give you that best chance of success, because you will have the broader vision of my theories and content. If you want unique, specific advice, you may want to speak with me one-on-one. And we can do this via my audio coaching service. More details can be found on my website, www.dateme.tips, where I can become your coach and your teammate. Check that website out if you want to speak with me one-on-one. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about relationship coach discusses dumper's remorse. And point number 3 is remorse doesn't always equal reconnecting. So one of the sadder but more important facts we have to cover on today's podcast is that even if your ex feels remorse, it doesn't necessarily mean they want to reconnect in a romantic sense. So it's important to realise that most dumpers do not want to hurt their dumpees. Most dumpers do not enjoy the pain they know their ex is going through when they end a relationship. They end the relationship because it is not working for them. The dumper is not feeling fulfilled, satisfied. They're not enjoying this connection as much as they should. But that doesn't mean they want to hurt their dumpee. That doesn't mean they want to hurt their ex. That doesn't mean they don't love their now former partner to a certain degree. And remorse can come straight away in this situation. Most dumpers will feel remorse about hurting their ex. They know the breakup is going to hurt you. They don't want to hurt you, but they have no choice in their mind. So this type of remorse can be instantaneous, but it doesn't mean that they're going to reconnect with you necessarily, because just because they're feeling remorse for hurting you, it doesn't mean they're feeling remorse of the loss of a relationship. Additionally, further down the line, your ex-dumper may feel remorse in a more romantic way, and that, of course, is what you are looking for. But if and when they reach out to you, you still have to navigate the choppy waters of the communication stage. So if your ex-dumper does start to feel remorse, does start to feel a true missing you in a romantic sense, they will likely reach out. And if they do and you respond, you have to realise that at that point, you haven't got your ex back. They are showing interest, they are feeling interest, they are missing you, they are feeling and showing remorse. But at this point, how you conduct yourself, how this moves forward from here, is going to dictate whether or not they want to move things forward into reconnection. They may miss you, but if they reach out and this communication doesn't go well, maybe for instance, they reach out, they say hi, and you respond by saying, well, why is it taking you so long? If you respond such as that, that is unlikely to help your chances of getting your ex back. You might feel frustrated, you might feel that they deserve you to say the things that you want to say. But if your ex-dumper reaches out to you and you don't treat this in the way that you need to, if you behave in a way which is full of frustration, anger, and maybe even some bitterness, you aren't going to get your ex back. You know, this needs to be moved forward in a positive way. And you need to take the necessary steps to move this communication forward into a dating scenario. So even though your ex-dumper in this situation has missed you romantically, you could easily just put them off. They might think, oh gosh, what am I thinking? Why have I reached out to my ex? You know, I now remember why I ended that relationship. Because this isn't working. You need to take that opportunity if and when it comes. So point number 3, really important to remember, remorse doesn't always equal reconnecting. They may feel remorse straight away for hurting you. They may feel remorse later down the line romantically, but it doesn't necessarily mean you've got your ex back at that stage. The work still has to come in, the effort, moving things forward. And always remember as well that it's not just down to your ex. You have a big say in this. Just because they might want to reconnect, you don't have to. You might be happier without them. You might be living a life where you are reaching version 2.0 of yourself. You may have met somebody even better. Just because they come back, it doesn't mean you have to accept the situation. You are your own person. You are not defined by your ex. You're not defined by this relationship. So always remember that you are the most important person in this situation. It's not just about them. It's also about you. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.